We on. How y'all doing? Welcome to Three Count Commentaries. I am MongoSlade. Today we're going to be doing our pop culture live stream. Call it pop culture because we talk about something other than wrestling at least once a week. So this week, I was supposed to watch a bunch of movies. I really only got around to watching two or three. Um, the Vince McMahon thing took over from the rest of the week. So this is going to be an interesting bit. So I did watch The Crow, and I guess I'll talk about that a little bit. Um, and then I guess I'll talk about some comic books. So I haven't read any new manga. I haven't went and picked up anything new yet. I only buy comics once a month, and that once a month will actually be Friday because I do it at the beginning of every month in order to minimize my trips to Dearborn, which is pretty far away. So that's where I just keep my box. My box is in Dearborn. I could probably do it closer, but Dearborn it is. Um, but I've been reading books, so that's a positive. I've read a couple of books. Um, I guess we could talk about some of those. I just uh, I just finished Claude Anderson's Powernomics. I finished that, and I'm starting My Larger Education by Booker T. Washington. Been reading some old heavy metal magazines. I think I told you guys that I ordered some heavy metal magazines way back in like May, and they didn't actually show up until like August. Which is crazy. I might even order them in like April, and they didn't show up until August. So it's really crazy. I gotta blow my nose, so it's probably about to be quiet for a few seconds. So it's gonna be an interesting bit. We're gonna figure out what we're gonna do today. But first, how's everybody doing? Hope everybody is doing well today. My wrist is not doing great, but it's okay. Uh, did you see the revival of Everybody Hates Chris? I saw that it's an animation, and I saw the trailer, if I remember correctly. It has the same cast as the original show, which is a positive because the original show is actually pretty funny. And since the original show is funny, maybe this new show will be funny. But I'm it's a modern show, so I'm not putting a lot of stock in it. But maybe it'll be funny. I'll give it uh I'll give it a good chance, I guess. I don't it being animated, I guess, is to avoid how much older everybody has gotten. But that the original show was pretty funny, so it wasn't like my favorite show, but I wouldn't have a problem watching it if it was on TV. Even though I'm not really a sitcom guy. If I'm going to watch a sitcom, it's going to be either from the 70s or the 80s, or there's a sitcom in the 90s or so that's worth watching. And I haven't seen anything since '99 outside of the Boondocks itself that was worth watching. Not really a Jamie Foxx guy, not really a Wayans Brothers guy. Even though I did think that the Wayans Brothers show was kind of funny sometimes. Not really big on those shows, but like Seinfeld, Martin, I love them. Oh, that's great shit. Um, the Jeffersons in the '80s, Good Times in the '70s, Sanford and Son in the '70s. Great shit. Uh, but I also that kind of I stopped watching TV a long time ago, so I really can't tell you. Oh yeah, I guess Archer and King of the Hill and stuff like that is funny. You know, King of the Hill is fucking hilarious. But I think King of the Hill actually debuted before 2000. Uh, I think. But if not, then King of the Hill is probably my favorite show since 2000. And Archer will be up there too. That's pretty. I used to religiously watch Archer. There also used to be some funny sitcoms that would come on like HBO and things like that. It used to be funny. Um, The Office is kind of funny too. Oh yeah, I forgot. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Extremely funny show. Definitely debuted after 2000. Absolutely funny. I haven't watched it in years because it's been going on forever, much like The Simpsons, where it's just kind of like on, and I'm not sure who watches it, but it's on. So, um, what's the scariest thing you ever read or watched? I'm not really into scary movies and shit like that. So, um, the I believe I have a book. It's is it The Illustrated Man? It's a collection of stories from I think is Ray Bradbury. Um, I guess that's the closest thing to scary I've read. I'm not really a scary movie, scary TV show guy. You know, uh, I don't really appreciate horror as much as everybody else does. You know, not much of a jump scare. You know, I tried watching that shit when I was younger. I just never got into it. Um, Prince Ali says Halloween '78 is genuinely a masterpiece. Felt bad brushing it off as a simple horror film first time you watched it. Interesting. I probably watched all of the Halloween movies on a binge once and don't remember none of them. uh, but I heard that the first Halloween was the best one. But then again, I heard that about all of them. But except for Friday the 13th, I know Friday the 13th, the first one does not have Jason in it. Jason, I think, appears in the second. I've never been a Freddy Krueger guy. I've never liked uh, Friday the 13th. Never thought Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. I just never liked it. I don't like the franchise. I think I have carpal tunnel syndrome. It's just sore for no reason. It's hard for me to bend it. I got a brace on now. I've been wearing a brace for a couple hours. I've been taking it on and taking it off, tightening it up. So I think I got a touch of that carpal tunnel sore for no reason. But dude did throw a chair. I don't think it hit me. So I'm not sure that if I'd have got hit by a chair, that'd have been crazy. But that's not what happened. I just it only hurts when I try to like bend it, whatever. That is what happens when you work with computers, I guess. WG feels as only the parents and side characters stuck around. The kids got changed. So there's only Chris now. There's no kids. There's no other kids. Humble 85 says, "What about a different world or living single?" I was never a living single. I didn't like that show. A different world. I probably watched it a little because it was connected to the Cosby Show, which I liked watching it with my dad. But I wasn't a I'm gonna watch the Cosby Show on my own, So, but I watched a different world a little bit when it was connected to the Cosby Show, a little bit, not a lot. Like I probably didn't make it past, whatever the first season maybe was. I couldn't even tell you anything except Dwayne Wayne's glasses were weird. King of the Hill '97. Okay, Living Single was extremely feminine. I think it was probably by design, though, because there wasn't a lot of black female uh, sitcoms. So Living Single fit a demographic, and it just wasn't me. I was just kind of like, I see why some people might like it. Same people who might like, Girlfriends or the Parkers or something like that. And I just kind of like, everything ain't for everybody. So, you know, I never really put too much energy into those kind of women heavy sitcoms like that. I gotta blow my nose again. Have I ever watched The Wire or Oz? I watched the first season of The Wire, and everybody claims it got better, and they say The Wire is one of the best shows ever. It didn't hook me when I watched the first season. Maybe I'll give it another chance. You know, I used to binge anime for you guys. Maybe I'll start watching regular TV shows. Maybe I'll just go and watch The Wire. You know, find a bootleg site and watch The Wire. But I've never been a guy that was into like the drug dealing shows and stuff like Power and stuff like that. It never really moved me. It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. I guess tickle my not just entertainment, but it doesn't. my- The word I'm looking for is lost, but it doesn't inspire me. I guess like some oddball shows really kind of get my attention, and you're like, "Whoa, this is interesting." But shows where guys are just selling drugs and killing each other, and it's like, it's it is what it is. Same thing with The Sopranos. I never really watched The Sopranos, really, even though I like gangster movies. Gangster movies seem to have a little bit more depth than most like hood TV shows. But I heard Wire was different, so maybe it is different. But I never really watched The Sopranos either. I watched the first season of Boardwalk Empire. Uh, I think it changed a lot after that first season. If I remember correctly, Boardwalk Empire was about the building of the casinos in Atlantic City, right? And the corruption therein, if I remember correctly. So it was like how the mob built Atlantic City, which is sounds interesting. And I'm pretty sure I watched the first season. Oh, he said the kids are there, but they changed the actors. Oh, okay, that makes sense. I thought they just got rid of the kids. I was like, oh damn, La Costa Nostra. That's all right. Maybe I will watch Boardwalk Empire. Like sometimes I'm always looking for stuff to watch, but I'm always falling behind. Like I fall behind on pretty much every anime I'm watching. I don't even know if there's new episodes of um, My Hero Academia still coming out. I'm pretty sure I have to look eventually. um, but Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer, all that stuff is I'm I'm not following them that closely. Not as closely as I should. I don't know what's going on. It's just not. It's not clicking. It's not clicking like it should. Yeah, Collision was on. I When I was on the exercise bike, I had it on in the background, and I heard the referee doing like a count for a no DQ match, and I was like, you know what? Enough's enough. I had enough of this. I had enough. Like we don't. This done. Would I be watching the anime Rick and Morty? I would not be watching Rick and Morty at all. I didn't really like Rick and Morty. I didn't get into it. WG Field said there's an official Comedy Central channel, the pilot for the Everybody Hates Chris animated show. I may watch it. Um, I'm going to try to watch Deadpool and Wolverine if I can find it. And I think I want to watch that Transformers movie too. Even though I don't, I'm not sure if I have any real connection to Transformers. Did I watch any 90s cartoons like Gargoyles or X? Well, clearly I watched X-Men and Spider-Man and Batman, a little bit of Superman, a little bit of Justice League, a little bit of Batman Beyond. I'm not really a DC Comics guy, but those shows were pretty good. Gargoyles, I watched a little bit. Um, I think Gargoyles was hitting right around the time I found Dragon Ball. And I was just kind of like, screw anime after that. But a lot of the cartoons I grew up watching were like from the 80s, like G.I. Joe, He Man, uh, Thundercats, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was kind of like, even though I was 3 or 4 when those shows came on, that's the era of cartoons that I remember being a kid. Growing up watching cartoons, it was a little bit different. You know, Rugrats was one of the ones that and Doug. I watched a lot of Rugrats. I watched a lot of Doug. Uh, so Nicktoons was kind of my jam. I liked Recess. I was really big on Recess, especially when they started doing the reruns of Recess. I thought it was pretty good. Um, but I never really got into like Ed and Eddie, uh, Courage the Cowardly Dog. I like Johnny Bravo. I like Samurai Jack. I was a big fan of Samurai Jack, even though I didn't see it going anywhere at the time. I became a big fan of Samurai Jack. Uh, so I was more of a Nicktoons guy at first, and then I kind of became more of a Cartoon Network. Dexter's Laboratory is one of my favorite shows. I love Dexter's Laboratory. It's really good. I like Hey Arnold. I never saw the whole thing though. I probably watched. I don't know. Like I never watched. I saw the episode when he started, dating. I guess Helga, but I never watched it beyond that. So I don't know how the show ended. I could tell you this: I never saw the end of any of these shows I'm talking about. I've never seen the end of Thundercats. I've never seen the end of GI Joe. I've never seen the end of Batman. I've never seen the end of Rugrats. I've never. I did see Rugrats all grown up, but I didn't see the end of that either. Um, I didn't watch most of these shows all the way through. They weren't destination television for me. They just shows that I remember watching as a kid and getting action figures for like Thundercats and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all that stuff. So I remember seeing the shows, but I don't remember ever like sitting down and watching the shows to the end. I was going to get the Thundercats especially and He Man on DVD. That was my plan throughout the early part of my 20s. Is I was going to get Dragon Ball, which I did. I got the big blue boxes and the big orange boxes. I got all of them. I wasn't going to get GT at all until it was on sale at FYE for like, I don't know, $12. And I went and bought that. And then I was like, okay, I found Amazon. I was like, I'm just going to order boxes of like Thundercats and He Man. And I think I got maybe one of each and then just lost interest and started moving on to like various other anime. Like, so I got Yu Yu Hakusho and Samurai Champloo and Outlaw Star and Gungrave and Black Blood Brothers, which I haven't seen in a long time. Speed Grapher. Uh, what other show? Oh, of course, Bebop. Of course. Um, so once I started veering off into anime, it was over. Helga's mother was an alcoholic. Wow. Did I watch Static Shock? Actually, no. I probably watched 2 episodes of Static Shock. That show didn't start until I was pretty much too old to be watching superhero cartoons. Of course, I was thinking about it that way as a kid, but I wasn't thinking. Nowadays, of course, it's not a big deal. Did most of those shows even have an ending? That's a good question because I don't really know how long those shows were on TV. Like that's the weird thing because um, I could tell that that wasn't the primary goal when they started making Thundercats and He-Man. The primary goal was to sell action figures. So and they didn't have linear stories anyway most of the time. So it was like what they call blue sky television, where it would be like a beginning, middle, and end, and then the next episode is a day in the life or whatever. And it's the same thing, same formula all the way through. It was no plan to sit down like Danny Phantom. When I watched Danny Phantom, which I really enjoyed, there was an end point to Danny Phantom where they felt okay, that's the end. There's no more. I don't think there was any idea when they started making like GI Joe and He Man and stuff that there would ever be an end point. I don't think that was ever in their plan. So I don't know when those shows went off the air or how the story developed. Hey Arnold had two movies. The first one took place before the final season and one in 2017 as an epilogue movie about Arnold's parents. Interesting. That's interesting. I watched a little bit of Hey Arnold. Um, it was another one of those shows that I thought it was interesting, but I never stuck with it. Again, I was just sad. I didn't really stick with anything other than anime all the way through. I didn't stick with Power Rangers. I didn't see the end of Power Rangers. I didn't stick with none of that shit. Pokemon. Yeah, once Pokemon got into like this endless rotation of reruns, I was done with it. I was just like, I don't know how many times I could watch him, you know, battle the same fuckers over and over again. I never really got into Yu-Gi-Oh because I was never into the cards. I've always thought the Yu-Gi-Oh cards was weird. You know, I can't believe it's still going strong like 30 years later. But I didn't think Yu-Gi-Oh was that popular until I went to my first anime convention, and that's when I realized like Yu-Gi-Oh is very serious business, and I need to understand that people are very serious about their Yu-Gi-Oh. Hey Arnold hit on traumatic experiences, addiction, relationship issues, and sacrifices. Sacrifices. You know what I mean? Like human sacrifice. You mean like having to give up something to gain something else? Have you ever been into kung fu Hong Kong films? Absolutely. There was a time when I didn't have cable, and all I could watch was whatever was on basic television. And this is what really made me a wrestling fan, is because wrestling was always on basic television. TV 38 here in Detroit had every wrestling show. WWF, ECW, of course, not WCW. Well, I think they might have had WCW, or was that on a different network? I'm not sure. But they used to show Jackie Chan movies all the time. Um, and it was, I became enamored with Jackie Chan because they showed Jackie Chan movies all the time on that network. And he seemed like he had made an endless number of movies. So of course, when I got a little bit older, I started watching Bruce Lee movies, started watching Tony Jaa movies. I got really into some of the big Chinese films, like I think when Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came out, there was a bunch of movies that came out that was kind of like that. Uh, so those were interesting. But yeah, I got into those things heavy. Uh, the Hong Kong flicks. I like when they got, in the 70s, they weren't really all that realistic. They got a little bit more realistic in the 2000s. In the Tony Jaa Jet Li era, amazing. One of my favorite ones is I love the one. I thought the one was great, Jet Li. But there was the other one. I want to say it was Unleashed or something where Jet Li had the dog collar on or whatever. That movie fucking ruled. All right, that movie kicked ass. Tony Jaa, the Protector. Where the guys beating up a bunch of dudes over an elephant. Like that shit ruled, bro. I was I was in. I was in. Um, but it all started with me watching Jackie Chan. You know, Jackie Chan is incredibly fun to watch. Oh yeah. Do I remember Ronin Warriors? Ronin Warriors, Ronin Warriors. That wasn't the show what they all had to go around collecting the armor, was it? Because that sounds like Knights of the Zodiac to me. I'm tripping. Um, Avatar: The Last. Oh yeah, I got Avatar. I got that on box set. I got Avatar and Korra on box set. I love Avatar. I didn't watch it until I was older though. Like I didn't watch it at all as a kid. I didn't know it existed. Um, Gozu94 says Jackie knows how to play a funny underdog with awesome fights. You know, that's really where I I became incredibly interested in the genre because Jackie was always the underdog, even though he very rarely ever got touched. He was always like, I don't want to do this. And he would just throw a table in their way and then slide under the table and then come on the other side. It was almost like pro wrestling, you know, it was almost like he was doing a bit. And that became like Jackie Chan's entire gimmick. Is he would run into an alley or something and get jumped by 32 people, and he'd be super nice, Jackie, not wanting to hit anybody. He wouldn't have fight, throw 3 punches and beat up 16 people because he hit him in the head with garbage cans and they jumped off the roof trying to attack him and tore up their legs or some ridiculous shit. It was great. It was absolutely great. He would barely touch people, and it would be funny as shit. I didn't know he made serious movies until I got older. And I was like, oh, he makes serious movies too? I don't know how I should feel about that. Yeah, Rumble in the Bronx is really fun. You know, WG Field says apparently there's a Dragon Ball movie that Toriyama worked on before his passing. I'm curious how authors or mangaka handled their IPs before their deaths. Well, I think that's why many of them try to finish it, so it'll be over with. Um, I think that eventually some people are going to they're going to learn, much like that's the positive. Dragon Ball is going to end up being something that's like Spider Man and Batman, where it's just going to go on forever, and people are just going to have to accept that. They're not going to ever end, quote unquote, the Dragon Ball story. It's just not going to end. It's too much of a cash cow. They're going to find new ways of pumping money into this thing. But everything else has to come to a conclusion. The problem is these mangaka don't know how to finish their stories. And a lot of the major mainstream stories of recent years that have ended, people have grumbled at the ending. Like I watched some of Tokyo Revengers, like the anime. I never read the manga, but people shit all over the finish to the manga. People shit all over it. Apparently, there was even like death threats to the mangaka. Um, Similarly, people shit all over the finish to Attack on Titan. People shit all over the finish to My Hero Academia. I didn't hear anything about the finish to Demon Slayer, so it must have been fine. But that seems to be like a big issue now, is that these guys get these really popular manga and then they don't stick the landing. So these guys are gonna what could last for a long time and really be interesting are not gonna really make it. Like I think the last one that really kind of stuck to finish was like Full Metal Alchemist. You know, like that was the last like really high level manga and anime that I can remember that people was obsessed with. And when it was over, they were genuinely happy at what happened at the end, you know. But most of the other times, people are not happy about how it finished. So maybe somebody needs to, I don't know, help these people map out a better finish. I don't even know what happened at the end of My Hero Academia yet. I'm waiting for the physical book. But from what I understand, people were very upset at the end of the series, and I was like, oh boy. Because I heard people was very upset about the end of Attack on Titan. I was like, it couldn't possibly be that bad. But I was actually only in the middle of the story at that point. I thought I was near the end. And I was like, oh, this is not too bad, you know? And then I got through all the stuff where we found out what the source of the Titans are, and I was like, oh boy. Oh boy. And then by the time we got to the finish, I was like, yeah, this sucks. It's not, cussing out the mangaka bad. Very, very few of those are worth cussing the guy out over. But it's pretty bad. You know, it's pretty bad. And a bad finish can ruin the series. You know. What's your favorite version of Dragon Ball Z? What do you mean, my favorite version? Cause well, cause there's. I guess you mean the original or Kai. I didn't watch Kai. You know, so I like the filler in Dragon Ball. So I don't like Kai. I do like the animation, and I think them upgrading the animation really helped. Golgo 13 still running since the 60s. I bought a bunch of Golgo 13 manga. It's actually okay. It's kind of dry because Golgo is not a active character. He's more of a passive character. The story is always about other people, and then he just comes in and helps, solve the problem. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, Golgo is fine. For me, it was like, not really. I need more active characters where the story is actively about them. Gozo says it seems like people are not liking the ending of Jujutsu Kaisen. Well, I wouldn't be surprised. It's a running gag lately. It's I know Spy Family is still going on, uh, but the only complaint there is that people are concerned that the story is not moving fast enough. But nobody seems to be mad at it yet. But I, I, the internet almost crashed and I didn't know Tokyo Revengers was that popular. But the internet pretty much almost crashed with people being angry about about the finish to that manga. And I was like, damn, I didn't know this manga was that popular. But they damn near crashed Twitter over it. They were super mad. I was like, oh my God. What could have possibly happened that made everybody that mad? But I don't know. I didn't finish the anime either. I got tired of the fucking guy crying all the time. I got tired of that shit. I was like, this is boring. This sucks. I understand he's doing his best, but no, it's not fun watching this guy get bullied and beat up in front of his girlfriend. It's not fun. It's not interesting. It's not a guy I want to invest too much time in. And I think that he got his ass kicked. What was his? I think it's Takamichi. He got his ass beat in front of his girlfriend in the rain or something like that. I mean, just got pummeled. And I was like, what is this? I think they humiliated him in some way. I think they stripped him naked or made him bark like a dog or something silly. They made him do. I was like, oh hell, I'm not watching more of this shit. And I was done with it right there. And I didn't ever went back to it. They did something to him, and it was absolutely humiliating. I was like, nah, good. I mean, your hero, when they did that kind of shit in Trigun, it was already set up that you know the character was going to do anything to avoid having to hurt people, having to kill people, and but he was still a badass. You know, in that show, he was weak, and then he had flashes of being tough, but he was just weak, 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 being bullied, pushed around. This shit just never seemed to ever improve, and I was like, "Fuck this! There's no point in me watching this shit no more." The girl in me enjoys Sailor Moon. I know a lot of people who like Sailor Moon. I even know some guys who like Sailor Moon. I like when we did the review of Sailor Moon for this channel. I like the first arc. I never went into the Sailor Moon R part, but I liked the first arc. Arc was great. It was fun. Tokyo Revenger was like a flash in the pan with its popularity. By the time it hit its peak, it crashed pretty hard. Mm. All I know is when uh when that finish came out, that last chapter, it was trending on Twitter for like 3 days, and it was nothing but negativity. It was nothing but negativity. It wasn't nobody trying to cop no pleas. It was everybody was fucking mad at that guy. But it seems like Chainsaw Man and Spy Family have the same issue where people are just upset with how the pacing, that the pacing is moving very slow. Or, I guess in Chainsaw Man, it kind of upset that Denji has become sort of a sidekick in the book. But it's kind of like they're trying to develop another character. Like Denji is still there. He's still on his same story arc. But it does suffer from a lack of villains. Basically the villains are not that interesting in the second arc of Chainsaw Man. You know, maybe that will change, maybe it won't, but it's still funny, still entertaining, still has an incredible amount of heart to it. But the energy that existed for the first arc, I guess you would call it the Makima arc, people were hot for that, but it's kind of cooled down now. So I still expect to see a lot of cosplayers for the very popular manga, but one thing I don't see anymore is I don't see any more One Punch Man. I don't even hear about One Punch Man anymore. So that's unfortunate. Gozu says, to be fair, Chainsaw Man and Spy Family do have irregular chapter release. Well, that would explain why it takes so long for the books to come out. Sometimes, man, I'd be shocked that I even still have Chainsaw Man in the box. You just be like, well, it's like a treat. You have no idea that it's still even going. Like it took so long to get to book 13. I thought they canceled it. Like I thought it was over. Like I read book 12 and was like, is that it? And then for like 8 months there was nothing. And then out of nowhere, hoop, here's 13. I'm like, 13? It's like a whole new character. It's like Black Lagoon. Like when I started reading Black Lagoon, the manga, and I got to book 12, and I thought, okay, it's a 12-issue manga. 12, volume manga. And I was like, wait a minute, this is the middle of the fucking story. Where's the rest of the story? And then I did, some searching and was like, the story is still going on. I'm like, still going. And it's been 20 years and it's still on chapter volume 12? How could that be? Did the guy fucking die is he doing like literally one word a day? How is it possible? But then I heard that it's the next volume is coming out in December, and that is the final volume. And I was like, okay, I guess. But it's really weird, of course. But that's just one of those things. What was my favorite episode of Cowboy Bebop? Oh, I want to call it by its proper name, but I don't think I can. But it's a Jet episode. It's the episode where um, Jet finds out that he was betrayed, and I think that's how he lost his arm, if I remember correctly. The episode where he lost his arm. I also was a really big fan of ooh, the episode where Spike and Vicious are fighting in the church after Vicious has kidnapped Valentine. I was a big fan of that one too. I thought that episode was fantastic. Um, Also, big fan of Ed when she left the show. Not because I didn't like Ed, but because the symbolism of Ed leaving the show was very, very powerful. And she got a happy ending. And she was the only one who got a happy ending, you know? And you kind of realize something, that she brought such levity and humor to the product. When they took her out of there, it was guns a blazing from that point forward. It was people dying. It got sad right after Ed left. And you was like, well, it's like the sunset. It was like, okay, you was having fun with Ed being silly, she's playing chess and all this kind of stuff. Some of the Ed plots were kind of weird. You're like, okay, you were having fun with that. Now we're back to space mafia. People are about to get shot up. So, but I was a big fan of Ed's big finish. I loved how they wrote it. I also loved that it wasn't too. It was emotional, but it wasn't. Because the Bebop crew, much like Samurai Champloo, which another one of my favorites, is that it's a ragtag group, but it's not necessarily found family. You know, like the people have mostly projected relationships onto the Bebop crew. They still mostly do their own thing. They just happen to live on the ship together, but they mostly do their own thing. Uh, and but Ed was the one thing that made it feel like it was a group that was brought together with a purpose. You know, and actually made it feel like a family because she wanted to interact with everybody and she wanted to do all that stuff. So when she left, it was like, okay, we're back to what it was at first. You know, which is three adults, three irresponsible adults at that, getting into shootouts. That's pretty much that's pretty much their thing. But I was a big fan of Jet's story. Him being like a space cop and all that. I thought that was great. So the Jet episodes were really good. Of course, the Spike episodes were great. My least favorite were probably the Faye Valentine episodes, especially when you find out that she was being taken advantage of by this con man. It was weird. Gozu says, "Don't mention Black Lagoon. I've been fiending for those new chapter release. I hate that they have to wait every 3 or 4 months for it. Oh my god, that's unreal. That's unreal. And they already have chapter or volume 13 listed on Amazon to come out in December. So if it ain't if it ain't finished in Japan yet, how in the hell is it gonna? I guess we'll figure it out. I guess we'll figure it out. I just don't have the patience to wait and read these joints chapter by chapter because I'm not going to remember it. Sometimes I read these entire volumes and have to go in when I get a new volume. I have to reread the one before it just to remember what the fuck I was reading before. you know, um, that's also why I personally like reading old manga because I can buy them in bulk and then I can just read 5 or 6 volumes and then put them on the shelf, order 5 or 6 more. That's what I was going to do with Yu Yu Hakusho. And then, there's a lot of medical issues, and I don't have a lot of free money floating around anymore, so I haven't done it. And I was also going to read Tokyo Ghoul because I heard that was actually better in the manga as it was in the anime. And some people hated the anime. I thought it was okay, but people were like, "Oh, the manga is so much better." And I was like, "Okay, maybe I'll read that." So yeah, Yu Yu Hakusho and Tokyo Ghoul is on my list. Um, uh, I did say I was going to read Berserk. When I go to um YumaCon this year, I'm probably going to end up buying those big books of Berserk. Not all of them, clearly, but maybe the first 2 or 3, just to get into the series. They typically be cheaper there than if I or cheaper, on Amazon, really. But maybe I'll see what they hit for first. Because it is about that season for me to just start saying I'm not going to buy any comics or anything like that. I'm just waiting to go to YumaCon. So this Friday or Saturday's uh, comic book haul will probably be I'll probably have to tell them I'm not coming back until December. It's like I'm probably going to skip November completely because YumaCon is the first week of November here, and I'm not coming in. I'm not coming in and do that, and I'm probably gonna spend all my money on YumaCon. So hate to break it to you, but I ain't gonna be there. Uh, but I don't expect that there's going to be much because even though I'd only pick up books once a month, the tab is only like $200. Because I don't have a lot of stuff on order. Um, what I know I got in the box is Trigun. They've been promising this maximum Trigun forever. It's $50, and normally I wouldn't order anything like that. But I said that if they ever reprinted Trigun, I would get it. So here it is. It's $50. That's the heftiest thing in there. And then they have the new reprint volume of Fist of the North Star. That's $25. That's in there. So together, that's $75 by itself. Um, I ordered the red, white, and bloodshot. The I like those red, white, and blood things. I like the bloodshot character, so I'm going to read that. I know I have Conan the Barbarian in there. I know I have some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff in there because I always do. Um, what else I got in there? There's got to be something else. It's probably some manga. It's probably like some stray manga in there too. So like usually because it takes so long for these manga to come out, it's probably like Tower of God in there or like Record of Ragnarok or something like that in that joint. So so the criticism that people are having of Triple H booking is that he don't book black people. That's what I saw, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get involved with that. I saw that coming. I saw it coming days ago. That's why I mentioned it on SmackDown. I knew they were going to say that there aren't any black guys on the roster. The percentage of black wrestlers getting pushed went down more than 50%. Let's put it like that. And in this case, it's true. The black guys fell off a cliff when Triple H got into power. It's unfortunate. Very unfortunate. I mean, if you're going to get rid of some guys, introduce some new ones, but they didn't even do that. But then again, you got rid of the most unique black guys you got, you know. But I was thinking the other day, like, what's wrong with Apollo Crews? And I was going to do a video, like, why Apollo Crews can't get a push? He can talk, he can wrestle. Nah, he ain't really getting over. But that's because you don't do anything with him either, And I was thinking about that, like, he's one of those guys that's been in the middle card forever. I'm not saying that he should be world champion or anything like that. I'm just saying, can we do something with this fucking guy? Because he's been gainfully employed for like a decade, right? It's been about 10 years. or at least 7 or 8. I think he was there as long as Ricochet been there in WWE, and they both had a similar career. 2-time Intercontinental Champion or 2-time United States Champion or whatever, and that's it. WG Phil says, I think the mangaka don't take a long time is due to a few of them being able to take breaks. I mean, I want these guys to take breaks. I'm so tired of hearing about the Japanese guys getting sick and them keeling over because they're working way into the night. That's no good. At the same time, though, that's the cost of being American. And you have to wait for them to print the manga, the chapter. And then you have to wait for a certain number of chapters to be released before they can then collect it. Then you have to translate it. And then it has to come all the way over here, get put on the shelf, and then you have to go and buy it. And that sucks. It takes forever, you know. But I don't know. I don't know. Like I know that comic books, they come out pretty regularly. So I would, and it's usually, well, some of these manga are trying to do it weekly, and that's a problem too. You know, Spider-Man comes out once a month or some shit like that. Like they're trying to do Dragon Ball weekly. That's a pain in the ass. If they could do it monthly, that might be a little bit easier for them. You might actually get better product too. Apollo wasn't around long as Finn Balor. Jesus, he's only longer than I thought. Yeah, that sucks, man. But I was like, I think it was after he beat the guy the second time, and I remember everybody was like, you know, myself included, we was focused on Vinci. Like, man, Vinci, what are they doing to this guy? But then a couple of days later, and this always happens when I do reviews, I always think about something as I either listen to the review back myself or I just randomly think about something. I'm like, wait a minute. Instead of being upset at what they're doing at Giovanni Vinci, why the fuck aren't they pushing Apollo Crews? You know, what is he missing? He's in great shape. He can work. He can talk. He has a personality. He doesn't even need to do the accent. What's missing here? And then I remember how disastrous that NXT run was, and I was like, what was that? Is he like Ember Moon, basically, where he's good but not good enough? Because I can accept that, but you know, I don't. I just want an explanation. you know. Um, WG Phil said he thought Dragon Ball Super was monthly before the hiatus. Well, I'm pretty sure Dragon Ball Super can get away with that. You know, the franchise is strong enough; they probably can get away with the taking a little bit more time. But I think if you were just trying to get on, like if the guy, whatever the fuck the guy is, they do One Piece, people will wait forever for One Piece, and people will wait forever for like Berserk. You know, even though I know that guy's dead now, people are willing to wait. People are willing to wait for a Hunter x Hunter because they're a big fan of the manga. You know, but and he's successful already. He doesn't need to rush. But a lot of those other guys, they need to pedal to the metal. But the crazy thing is, and I've been having this problem because I was going to talk about this series. It's called Requiem Vampire Night. How many of you have ever heard of that? It's by Pat Mills, and I know the artist's name is Ledroit or Ledroit. It is the artist is French. Is it Olivier Ledroit? It's a beautiful fucking book. It was first printed in Heavy Metal magazine. Pat Mills is English, and there ended up being like 10 volumes of this thing. It ended up being incredibly popular of this Vampire Nights scenarios, and it's incredibly difficult to find any of the collected volumes after two. Like I ordered uh, Requiem Vampire Night 1 and 2 from the heavy metal website 5 or 6 years ago. But I have not been able to find 3, 4, 5, and it's like 10 or 12. So you can get them on like Comixology. You can get all of that stuff, the entire series. Absolutely beautiful book. I'll tell you what the plot is in a second. But I want to read the entire thing, but I can't find a physical copy of it. It's ridiculous that I can find manga from the 80s on Amazon, but I can't find this series that was printed in the United States, even though the writers and stuff is from England and France respectively in like 2011. All right, so there's no good reason unless they had like a limited print run. But you look up like Amazon, and these fucking books are like 100 and some odd dollars, and you're like, what on earth? Why? It's only like 5 ever made. It's not possible. All right, so Requiem Vampire Night. It is sort of a gothic horror style uh, comic book written by Pat Mills, who is an extremely left wing writer. Now, all of them are left wing. This guy is extreme. I'll tell you in a second. And it's a redemption story. The hero, his name is Requiem, Heinrich Requiem, and he was a Nazi while he was alive. And he ended up falling in love with a Jew woman who was taken away by the Nazis and presumably killed. So he kind of spends the rest of his life trying to find her. And then he finds a woman who looks like her while out on the battlefield. And he tries to rape her. And she kills him. And he is resurrected as a vampire. And then you get the story that, of course, this is on Earth. You're resurrected in hell or whatever. And what you were as a person on Earth decides how you are resurrected in hell or whatever they call it. So he was a predator, a rapist, and a Nazi and a murderer or whatever. And he is resurrected as a predator in the afterlife, i.e., a vampire. So, of course, at first he has no knowledge of who he was or what he was in his prior life. And of course, he finds out later, and he tries to go on a redemption tour, basically, because he still wants to find the Jewess that he was in love with, even though both of them now are dead. And then you find out that hell is populated with all these other kinds of creatures. Um, there's these 3 pirates. You know, uh, there were Mother Terror, Mother Mother Cure, and what's the other one? Is Mother something. And they hunt and kill vampires. And Mother Terror was a nun who prostituted little boys. Mother Cure, no, Mother Terror was a nun that tortured boys. She was supposed to be like a nurse or something like that, and she tortured, children because suffering brings us closer to God. And then Mother Cure was a nurse who murdered her patients. And then there was another one who I forget what her name was, but she prostituted young women. She was also a nun or something like that. She prostituted young girls. And they were resurrected as like these pirate skeleton things. It was really fucking creepy. And then there's these other creatures they're called the Lamias. And these are people who were killed as victims. So sometimes they were the victims of the vampires and they haunt them. So part of the story is the vampires of course have to drink blood, but they have to drink the blood of the undead. And it goes into this whole conspiracy about Dracula of course being the king of the vampires, but it's more like a family name where it's not the literal Dracula, but like your name, like the name of one of the people is like Caligula Dracula. but it's not like the Caligula from Earth who was resurrected as a vampire and related to Dracula. Even though one of the people is literally supposed to be Aleister Crowley, the do what thou wilt Satanist guy who was died on Earth and was resurrected as a member of Dracula's family. But it's incredibly interesting because I was like, man, and a a spooky gothic redemption story for a Nazi rapist. Like he's a man of honor and tries to be different than he was when he was alive. And he's of course you're following his life and stuff, so or you're following his afterlife, I guess. And so you're trying to learn the politics of vampires who are the highest ranking of the demons, or it wouldn't even be fair to call them demons. It's like creatures in the afterlife or some shit. And it's really fucking interesting. It's really interesting. But Pat Mills, really good writer, um, writes really good shit. He wrote a book called Shah. It's far left wing as fuck. He also came up with a character called Slain, which was like his answer to Conan the Barbarian. But Slain is basically like a male feminist. This is just like a feminist Conan who prays to like a female god. It was called the Horned God. I read it in uh, Heavy Metal. I read one of the chapters in Heavy Metal. I'm gonna get the entire book because it has Simon Bisley art, so it fucking ruled. But Pat Mills' book Shaw is incredibly feminist. It's good, but it's just feminist as fuck. And that's like the positive thing of it is that at least it's not, like I know he has other things that if you like look him up on Amazon or something like that, he has other things that are in- far more political. And all of his work is, the characters are feminists and the women are dominant characters and trying to manipulate the guys and all that kind of stuff. But he's a good writer. It's like Alan Moore. He has his proclivities. Alan Moore likes rape. I don't know why, but he does. So, but it's a good book if you to pick up. If you can get Requiem 1 or 2 and just read that, and it'd be a great book for like Halloween. Do you have a Clive Barker book? No, I don't. I'm not really into horror. Like I like vampires and shit, but I really don't like horror stories. Not really a horror story guy. I when I liked vampires, it was like I like what was that one series um with Kate Beckinsale? You said that's a wild statement. I don't know. What was the wild statement? I said a lot of shit. Young Sheldon is a pretty good show, although it's a prequel of Big Bang Theory. You can enjoy it on its own. Yeah, Big Bang Theory ruined everybody's life. Oh, Alan Moore. Yeah, Alan Moore is a sick man. But I mean, not to go too much into. Oh yeah, I guess I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about what Underworld. Yes, absolutely. There we go. Um, but the Vince McMahon documentary, everybody's going back to look at everything that he's done and putting a fresh coat of creep all over it. Nobody does that with Alan Moore. He's raping every single book that he's ever written. I think some of his heroes are rapists. It's like, why would you do that? What's that about? Just to say. But the the Vince McMahon review, I guess you could say. It's not really going to be a review. It's going to be like 5 or 6 separate subjects. My plan is to release one per day. So like 10 in the morning every day. So I've already recorded the first 4. Um, and I basically compile like episode 1 is going to be about the McMahon family, meaning Vince and his relationship to the family via the documentary. Episode 2 is going to be about Vince and the boys, how he relates to the boys and situations that involve talent. 3 is going to be about women, Vince and his relationship to all the women and the lawsuits and stuff like that. And 4 is going to be about the media, Bob Costas, Phil Mushnick, all those guys, and Vince McMahon. So of course we're going to talk about that. And then the 5th one is probably the last one that I have planned, and it's going to be about how Vince sees himself. His thoughts on his own legacy, his thoughts on his own upbringing, what kind of person he is, yada yada yada. And that's my plan, is to do record all 5 of them this weekend, but just schedule them to have one per day. And they're going to be about 30 minutes apiece. And I may do a final thoughts, because I didn't talk about absolutely everything in the documentary. It's just impossible. So maybe I'll do an episode 6 next Saturday, where it's kind of like final thoughts about the series as a whole. Because I never actually go into whether in any of these videos so far about whether I actually liked it or not. Like I never really went into whether I actually liked the documentary. And I didn't realize that until I did episode 4. And I was like, do you get a sense I even like this thing? And maybe you'll get an idea whether I like it or not by listening to it. But I don't go through bit by bit everything. And I don't do with this what I did with like Dark Side of the Ring, where I'm fact checking and expanding on things. I'm mostly just looking at Vince's responses to the various people in the book. In the documentary, and how they choose to approach the subject of Vince McMahon, or the subject of whatever it is they're talking about. It was clearly made for non-wrestling fans, and because the lack of details and the election to attention to detail. But these things are almost always made for the maximum number of people. I know that everybody wants to sit down and debate WrestleMania 3's attendance record, but did the average person really give a fuck? No, really don't care. And it's not 78,000 anyway. It's 88,100. So, and the crazy thing is, once I found out where that Big Span had debunked Meltzer's number, that's actually when I found out where Meltzer got his number from. He got his number from the promoter, who apparently shuffled him some paperwork. But that would have been years later, because if you look at some of the Meltzer yearbooks, like in 87, 88, and stuff, he's still using the 93,000 number. So I don't know when he got his information. Maybe that's why I should have a Wrestling Observer newsletter subscription, but I can't afford to have any more subscriptions. Besides $15 to read horseshit, the important thing would be to the current events of the time, which would be like, the important element if I was running that kind of podcast. But I do mostly commentary, not. Did I hear about the superhero lawsuit trademark? Well, you mean that Marvel and DC, they share the trademark to the term superhero? Because I have heard that they share the trademark to the term superhero, and therefore other companies can't use the term superhero. Seems very weird to me. Is there anything new in the documentary? No, not really. No. If you are in the internet wrestling community and you're obsessed with these people already, no. You're hearing mostly different versions of stories that you've heard before, even stories that may contradict previous stories that you've heard before. I guess the one thing that might be new is Tony Atlas talking about Pat Patterson grabbed his pecker. He grabbed my pecker. Yeah, I don't know. But other than that, no. They talk about a bunch of shit you've already heard before. Uh, so it just, but it's still interesting. It's still an interesting documentary, and I still think it's worth watching. Everybody who said it's not worth watching, I don't know what they were looking for. They're looking for bombshells, or you know, that he's going to sit down and talk about Janelle Grant. And I did see that Slam Wrestling said, oh, when they saw that the interview only went up to 2021, they decided not to watch it. I'm like, okay, you're only interested in these current lawsuits, this current ongoing lawsuit that has not yet been resolved, that has not gone to court, and Janelle Grant's not going to be in it. And you're not interested in like the rest of it. Unfortunately for me though, if I felt like I had already seen it because there were so many clips floating around. Like there was so many clips within the first couple hours. I was at work just watching clips. And I felt like I could have done review on the documentary just by looking at the fucking clips. Cause it felt like I had already seen it. So when I sat down and watched it for real, I was like, oh shit, I saw this clip already. I saw that clip already. But it still was much better because when people look at clips and then they clip things, sometimes they clip them out of context. And there's a couple of things that were clipped out of context, like his response to Rita Chatterton was often clipped out of context. You know, so I didn't appreciate that, but that's what happens when you're dealing with people online. So it's basically like them telling us about the Montreal Screwjob. Yep, the Montreal Screwjob it's in there. I don't know why the Monday Night War. They spend so much time on it. They spend a hell of a lot of time on the Monday Night War. They spend a lot of time on the steroid trial. They spend twice as long on the Monday Night War than they spent on his childhood. Because they spent almost no time on his childhood. Almost none. I hate to criticize people, you know, because they have a target audience. And their target audience is people who know who this figure is, but they don't want to go into any details. If you've seen all the WWE documentaries and Dark Side of the Ring shit, it's the same stuff. It's the same shit. It's just that Vince is talking about some of this stuff when usually he doesn't. Like Vince usually doesn't talk about Rita Chatterton. This is the first time I think he's ever made a public statement about it. So that was new to me. Outside of him denying it was rape. He said it was an affair and it was consensual. That's what he said. You know, and then he also said, "But if it was rape, statute of limitations had far gone." And this was before New York decided to forego statute of limitations and throw those things in the garbage. So then she got to sue him again. He said the documentary did a lot of fact checking. Not really. they did they did enough because Vince was off. He was off the mark a lot. He's an old man. But there was some very humorous editing being done in that joint. Like when they embarrassed Bruce. That seemed to be like they were setting Bruce up, you know. But whatever. Bruce is a big boy. He'll be okay. Maybe you already talked about this earlier, but did you hear about Vince getting raped by his mom? I actually, that was something that was, I believe it first came up in the Playboy article, if I remember correctly. Uh, but it's glossed over in the documentary. There's no discussion about it. There's virtually no discussion. Again, there's virtually no discussion about it. Vince's life prior to meeting his dad. I mean, if you're looking to learn a hell of a lot about Vince McMahon, you'll learn a lot about Vince McMahon, but you're not going to learn a lot about you know, his relationship to his parents or anything like that. He grabbed my pecker. AJ3 says, "Did you know there was an Underworld movie back in the 80s?" No, I didn't. I like that series. I know a lot of people got sick of it over time, but I liked Underworld. I thought it was telling good stories. I thought it was interesting at the very least. You know, so but I I'm not gonna say I like the Resident Evil movies, but I didn't hate them as much as everybody else. I saw what they were trying to do with it. Oh, excuse me. Have you seen the video of Tony Atlas getting stepped on and slapped? Well, here's the question: which one? Because there's so many of them. There's a ton of videos of him getting stepped on by old white women, getting smacked in the face, him licking their feet and all kinds of weird shit. There's a ton of stuff that was happening. But I got the Playboy article brought up now. I would have to search through. Yeah, so Vince actually talks more about his parents and his upbringing in this Playboy article. And they asked him about the Playboy article, and they didn't go through any of the fucking shit that's in it. You know, like that's weird. Like what a lot of people know about Vince comes from this Playboy article that he was very open and honest about. You know, even naming his stepfather, which he doesn't do in the documentary. His stepfather doesn't have a name. His mother does not have a name in the documentary. That's how. That's when people say like they do some fact checking. I'm like, his mother doesn't have a name. His stepmother doesn't have a name. He doesn't have a brother or a sister, according to this documentary. But whatever. They didn't go into much of what may interest people, but there's a good reason for it. And I think as I sat down and thought my way through it and talked about it, you'll probably get a sense of why that happened the way that it did. I don't think Hogan was lying though. I think Hogan was telling the truth. You know, the way that the trial broke down, you know, Vince had steroids and they were his, and he let Hogan use them. He wasn't selling them. They were just using steroids, you know, independent of each other. Hogan lying up on Arsenio was hilarious though. Hulk being one big liar. I mean, for starters, the government had a really stupid case anyway. They tried to claim that he was trafficking drugs at a date that the WWF didn't even have a show in New York. It was stupid. It was real fucking stupid. But the whole sex trafficking thing is, we'll see how that shit shakes out. Tony Atlas with his foot fetish, he turns it into content, and this is humorous. Stone Mexican guy says Underworld was fun. I bought the collection. They're dumb fun. I like the Resident Evil movies too. They're just dumb schlock. I wish, I just wish that the characters actor that uh fuck whatever actress name is escaping me right now. I just wish that her character was somebody that was really in the games. That's all. Like if she was Claire, you still wouldn't be able to do all that kung fu shit with the zombies, but you know, it'd probably been better received. But her being some kind of meta-human thing, I was like, I don't know. Um, I did like the movie version of Wesker though. I thought that was pretty cool. I also like the movie version of Nemesis. I thought that was pretty cool too. I know Resident Evil fans, they're never going to get the movie that they want though. They're never going to get the game or the movie that they want because Capcom is not going to dedicate the energy and the time to doing it. And since Resident Evil takes a lot of it is indoors, where you're in an abandoned lab or you're in an abandoned mansion or something like that. They're not going to do a whole movie in an abandoned lab or in an abandoned mansion. And it would just look like The Walking Dead. Walking Dead done that already. So I think The Walking Dead killed zombies for a while, for a lot of people, if we're being honest. Kind of like don't need zombies no more after that. they zombied everybody out. Prince Noctis says Kate Beckinsale was my first crush when I was a kid. Something about her in all black, good lord. Man, you must be young because Kate Beckinsale was she's a beautiful woman for sure. But I didn't look at her like that. I was I wasn't looking at her like that, I guess. Mila Jovovich. There we is. There we go. I wished they would make a Resident Evil spinoff with Alice. Screw it. Resident Evil, the movie, the game, like they did with Street Fighter. Right. I mean, since the character already exists now, just make her in the game. You know? Why not? Just do the game. Oh, the Tomb Raider cartoon. I saw the trailer for the Tomb Raider cartoon. I laughed my ass off. You know, I don't. It's been 30 years. They still don't get it. They don't get it. They don't know why that franchise was popular. They don't get it. They'll never get it. It'll never be what they want it to be. You think Vince was at a Diddy party? No, I don't think so. I think he, I think that he probably had his own little private getaway where he did the kind of shit that he wanted to do. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would show up to a party where he could possibly be blackmailed by strangers. He's most likely to get blackmailed by the broads that he's using, which is what happened exactly. Stone Mexican said, I don't think Capcom is the problem. I think Hollywood doesn't get it. They just make another movie about zombies and evil company. That could possibly be it. But a lot of those Resident Evil movies were really low budget. And if Capcom gave a fuck, they could have took and they did didn't they do a Netflix movie that was even worse than all the crap that Mila Jovovich was doing? Like it was felt like they was doing something even worse. So I don't know. Resident Evil is too popular of a franchise for them not to be able to make a movie. It's not like it's a fighting game. Like, good luck trying to make a movie out of a fighting game. But Resident Evil is simple. Evil company, releases a virus onto the earth, and you got to survive to get out of town or whatever, and bring down evil company. You, I think it probably would make a better TV show than a movie. If we've been honest, it might actually work better as a TV show. I see me getting caught in the rain is starting to come back on me. I'm certainly going to need to take some cold medicine. Like I'm not coughing a lot, but my nose running a lot. AJ3 says, how long does it take for Hollywood to get comic books right? Remember the 90s when they had all those comic book movies and video games? The problem is Hollywood writers have huge egos and they think they can do it better. They don't understand what made it popular in the first place. And so they think they can do it better. And you see what they did with Mario, right? They subverted Mario by trying to make it better. Oh, Princess Peach doesn't need to be saved. She can save herself. Stupid. Just a stupid fucking story at that point, bro. You know, it's like you're just utilizing the characters as a means of telling your story, what you want to tell, and not telling the story of the video game or expanding on the story of the video game. You know, now Princess Peach has, is one of the most powerful beings in the universe or some dumb shit. It's like, come on, man. She could have escaped Bowser whenever she wants to. All right. So good way of destroying all the tension in the movie. But I still like the Mario movie anyway. But you can see that they've been doing that shit. You know, they don't want to show certain characters being weak. They don't want to show certain characters being made fun of. So they're twist and they've been doing this shit forever. Hollywood writers think they can fix things. Oh, this is a weakness. I can fix it. And it's ego. They're not creative. You know, as far as I can look, and there's very, very rarely where Hollywood actually does fix a property. There's been a couple of books where the movie is better than the book. It's happened a couple times. And sometimes Hollywood does find a way of simplifying or I think the writer of American Psycho said that he prefers the movie to the book. you know, the writer of Fight Club says he prefers the movie to the book. You know, and you're like, wow. But those are like very, very rare occasions. 99% of the time, the book, comic, video game, or whatever is going to be better than the movie because Hollywood writers have huge egos and they think, well, it's a different medium. You got to do different things, or we got a budget we got to hit, so we can't have all the trappings of the video game or whatever. And that's true, but the basic plot should be there, or things should look like I don't know how many times they have to botch things before people give up. Like when they did the X-Men Apocalypse, and their version of Apocalypse was just like a giant blueberry. I'm like, bro, this sucks. This is not good. This is not for consumption. This sucks. This is a very bad product. And I really could have just swore off X-Men movies right there. I'm like, I'm not watching any more of these things. I don't care who you put in it. I'm not watching any more of these things. But then they seem to be interested in being a little bit more comic book accurate, a little bit more. And then they did that dumb shit in Spider-Man 2 when, Shocker is, upset, not Shocker, what the fuck, Electro is obsessed with Spider-Man and he's a dweeb and a nerd and all this kind of stuff. I was like, oh, hell no. That I almost swore off comic book movies right there too. I was like, oh, fuck this. No, I don't want the spikes all over his head. I don't need that. Some of the hokey comic book comic book look, I don't necessarily need that. But I need you to actually respect the fucking characters. I do need that. You can do interesting and different things with them, but the basic plot should be the same. Should work. It should be recognizable to people. That's why we're doing your story or the story of another writer rather than yours. Because what you write ain't good enough. You didn't write Spider-Man fight Electro. So you should just read who did and decide, take bits and pieces of this one, bits and pieces of this one. And if you want to create a whole new Electro, at least have something that was unique about it, or that it fits into the overall story. Like if you're trying to do a trilogy or whatever, because they switched up Vulture in the Spider-Man franchise and the Marvel Spider-Man franchise. It was fine. I didn't hate the change of Vulture. It's not it's not Vulture, but it was fine. Nobody complained. Nobody was mad. They changed up Mysterio a little bit, but nobody was angry about that. Nobody was pissed off because they changed Mysterio just a little bit here and there. You can make some changes and it's okay, but you can't completely subvert the plot. You can't do bad CGI, bad casting, and then just be like slap X-Men on it or something like that, and people are happy. Just forget it. It's not going to work. Netflix did a show where Wesker was black. Great job. Well, look, Wesker, I don't know, him being basically Agent Smith that works for Umbrella is fucking funny. I don't know why he needs to be black. I don't know why he needs to be black. The Dead or Alive movie. I didn't watch it. I didn't even bother to watch it. Did they ever explain why the Walking Dead zombies happened? I think they explained it in the comics, but I don't think they ever got around to it in the TV show. And I don't remember because I didn't read the comics. It seemed like the only part that most people cared about anyway involved the first couple of chapters of The Walking Dead. You know, and the TV show, a lot of people, they came and went with it. I hung with the Walking Dead TV show for longer than most people did. They did a Resident Evil TV show, and it was on Netflix, and Wesker was black. Well, I think we found our problem is that it was on Netflix, and Netflix has an agenda that they want to follow. Want enough Negroes on show? Like you could easily make like there's no reason for Claire to be white. You could make Claire black. Like that's the thing about Resident Evil is like the characters aren't really they're not Japanese. You know, I, maybe there are. Well, Claire is she's kind of Asian. The only one that really is Asian is the shit. Her name's right on the tip of my tongue. Is it Ava or whatever? But she's like the spy or whatever. She's kind of like Asian. But everybody else is kind of like vaguely white-ish, Asian-ish. You could play with them. You can't really. I don't know why it had to be Wesker because he's cool. All of a sudden he's got to be black. I don't know. Ada Wong. There we go. Stone Mexican guy says the Mario movie should have had a CGI Captain Lou Albano with the rubber band in his chin, not the rubber band in his cheek. Did anybody ever explain why the fuck he had a rubber band in his cheek? It seemingly is the most random thing in all of pro wrestling, and nobody talks about is Captain Lou Albano having a rubber band on his cheek. It seemingly comes out of nowhere, and it's just there always, and nobody says anything. Even Netflix had characters in that Castlevania anime blackwashed. Boy, they love doing that, don't they? I heard people actually like that show though, the Castlevania show. At least they did initially. I don't know if they still do. I don't want to lie. I don't want to be a liar, but I heard people actually like that show. Maybe they don't anymore. Who knows? Who cares really? Um, Netflix is the shits. It's just the shits. So, what more is there to it? Um, their writers' room and DEI and everybody to death. It's tough, man, because if you have any ideas, there's always going to be some gatekeeper there looking to add something that you don't want. You know, I'm at the point now where it's not even worth talking about anymore. It's not even really worth talking about, man. You know, I know people get all excited about the DEI shit, but it's not even worth talking about. But while it's over an hour into this thing, so let's talk about The Crow. Since we're talking about DEI shit, because they did change Shelley in The Crow. Shelley, now I talked about The Crow on this channel before. It was written by Eric James Obar after his girlfriend died in a car accident. He was overcome with grief, and he came up with this character. You know, these two characters, Eric and Shelley, and he poured out his heart through poetry and art in this comic book called The Crow. It was turned into a movie in what was that, 94 maybe? Became a cult classic. Everybody loves the comic book. Everybody loves the movie. Nobody cares about the subsequent material. There was subsequent material that came afterwards, City of Angels and a bunch of other shit. Nobody cares about that. And they decided to remake The Crow this year. The remake of The Crow is very bad. And it's it's bad because what they wanted to do was to add a lot of backstory to Shelley. That was the problem. You see, in the original story and in the original movie, there isn't much to Shelley. She's just a victim. She's a normal girl who is in love with a musician, and her and the musician are the victim of random acts of violence where she's raped and murdered. And Eric is killed trying to help protect Shelley, and his soul cannot rest. And he's resurrected as the Crow. They don't go with that plot for the new movie. They decided that Shelley and Eric are both like mental patients who ended up in the same hospital. And Shelley was mixed up with some demons from another world or something. And she had to be sacrificed or something to that effect. And Eric, of course, is there, and he's killed right along with her. And they're smothered with plastic bags over their head. And then all of a sudden, you get this idea that Eric has to avenge Shelley so she can get her life back. And that's where the story begins. But the vast majority of the movie is the two of them frolicking in the woods, doing drugs, singing songs, going to raves, and then they, like there's no real feel to the villains. Like, who the fuck are these villains? You just told they shouldn't be on the earth. I'm like, okay, great. Well, who the fuck are they? What are they? What is this thing? And it's like the main villain is some kind of demon that can force you to commit suicide or some nonsense like that. He reaps souls for the devil or something, some silly shit like that. And Shelley is trying to hide out from them, and then she gets caught, and that's when they both get murdered. So I took copious amounts of notes on this, and then realized they're like, bro, it's not even worth spending a lot of time on. They changed so much of the series. Now it does get bloody, it does get violent, it gets to where you want it to be, because that's really what people loved about The Crow, is how much of a revenge story it was. Eric was in agony, he was in pain, and he he just took it out on all of these people who were connected with the death of him and Shelley. But he doesn't even get to that point until you're like an hour into the movie. You're like, fuck. This sucks. Like let's get to the part where Eric gets his revenge. And they even did the thing where Eric denies. No, it was some kind of stupid new wrinkle that they did where his love had to be pure. And Shelly is keeping a secret that she was involved with this cabal and she had been brainwashed into murdering somebody or something. And then Eric finds out about this and his love is no longer pure, so he loses his crow powers. And he's sent back to the limbo, I guess. And you're like, what the fuck is this? What is this? Like, what is this shit? Um, but it doesn't have the aesthetic of the originals. Like the aesthetic of the originals, like for starters, one reason why I'm so passionate about The Crow is because it's one of the few stories like RoboCop that's actually set in Detroit, you know, and you get a lot of that grimy '80s Detroit in The Crow. It's not so much in the movie. It's kind of like generic bad guy, bad town anywhere in the movie, but in the comic is like Detroit, and the villains are drug dealers, crackheads, just general ne'er do wells who was out high, fucking around, robbing people. You know, no kind of plan to it. It could have been anybody. It just happened to be them. So it was like random acts of violence. In this situation, it's like Shelley was targeted, but the aesthetic is is so off. Like they tried to find like grimy backwater England, Ireland, or something. They had like these weird accents, and I'm like, oh my god, we're already not even in the same place we're supposed to be in. you know. Uh, Now, as far as the guy being a twink, it's like, well, Eric is a twink. He's a musician. If you follow the story, if you read the manga, he's always dancing and writing poetry and shit. He's muscular, because it looked like he might work out, but he's not like Batman or anything like that. He's not super strong and all that shit. He's just basically unkillable. That's the that's basically the superpower of the crow. Is you can't kill him. You can, and he feels pain, but again, he doesn't die. So it's he doesn't need to be gigantic and muscular. It's just not necessary. So when people say like, oh, the new Eric, he's a twink, I'm like, yeah, they're all twinks. It's okay. Um, it's the plot that it takes forever. It takes forever for the shit to develop. You have this idea about Shelly that she's involved with something really bad. They never tell you what it is because you're not really sure what the organization she's involved with is. They're kind of some kind of hell demons or something like that, but they never really lay it out. And then you're like, dude, you get why they did that because you want to have these supernatural forces combat against each other. But do we really need supernatural forces combating against each other? The point is Eric's pissed off because you murdered his girlfriend. You could even, if you wanted to be woke, you could delete the rape part, right? You could just say, okay, we're not going to do the rape. We're just going to do murder. It's a home invasion, right? It's similar concept. They decided to bust in the house while they were in there, and they both get killed. But when they tried to basically to prevent fridging, quote unquote, that they were going to give Shelly all this backstory, and it ended up eating up most of the movie. And you don't care about any of these fucking people. You just want them to die. Like I always want to watch Eric kill people. That's what I'm here to see. I'm here to see him go nuts and shoot people. I want the agony needs to be there. That's the only element of the fucking movie that felt similar to the book was how much anguish he was in and finding out that Shelley was dead. That was it. Everything else felt like they're writing a whole new thing. Alfred Hardin says everything in history is whitewashed, my guy. Salute, fam. I wouldn't say that. I think that there's too many people who are Eurocentric and there's too many people who are Afrocentric. I don't know about whitewash. I mean, to put on my Hotep hat a little bit, because Africans didn't write down a lot of stuff. They didn't have communication through writing. They did. They passed a lot of things down verbally. There is a lot of African history that is lost. It's just lost because they didn't write shit down. So now you got you know these storytellers passing down stories from years ago that they didn't see, from people they never met, and these are all stories that were just being passed down from one person to the next. And that actually is what is part of the reason why Africans, it takes them so long to develop, is because they didn't write anything down. So when you have that kind of situation and Europeans are writing down every fucking thing that they come across, and the same thing with Asians, it does come across like the only history is European history, because they were the ones going around the world writing shit down. Even if Africans did go around the world, they didn't write it down. So you end up in a really fucked situation. But whenever people focus strictly on Europe and Africa, you're missing over 60% of the world. Because Indians did shit, Asians did shit, a bunch of people did stuff. Arabs are on the African continent, and Negroes act like Africans are only black, like sub-Saharan Africa. Like that's it. It's like no, there's like when you talk about the Moors are more than likely going to end up being Arabs, Berbers that you're talking about. But you don't want to hear that. They're from Morocco and Liberia, or what's that other one? Egypt. All those people are fucking Arabs, man. They always been Arabs. So there's probably some blacks up there, obviously, but it's like you didn't write it down. You didn't write your history down, so you let the white people tell the history. Now people can fix that, of course. You can catch up, but what do? WG Field says when shows blackwash characters, why is African American the only race they choose for it? 9 times out of 10 is because the show is going to be released and they want it to be popular in the U.S. But you'll see it over time. They'll start putting black Irish people and black Englishmen in there. It's just that it hasn't happened yet, but it will happen. What fanfic dungeon did they find these writers in? It's a confusing thing to me that you would get the Crow property that people have a lot of reverence for, and you will just decide you're not going to watch the movie, you're not going to read the comic, any of the comics. You're going to recreate the entirety of the lore. You're going to use the names of the characters, where the Crow is one of those very, very rare IPs where you can literally make shit up if you want to. Every Crow series is a different version of the Crow. You didn't have to use Eric and Shelley. You could have used Bonnie and Clyde, or literally anybody else. You didn't have to use Eric and Shelley, but whatever. WG Field says, I mean, instead of Hispanic, Asian, or Pacific Islander. Oh, okay. Yeah, that is a good point. They never, well, sometimes, like, they made Lois Lane Asian in that My Adventures with Superman. They made Harley Quinn Asian in Cape Crusader and Batman. So it happens eventually. But you don't see, like, random Tongans. And, like, we're going to turn, the penguin. They'd rather turn him into a woman than turn him into a Pakistani or some shit like that, right? You talk like Tiger Ali Singh or something. No, they'd rather They much rather he just be a woman. Just be surprised they're not turning them into trans people. We haven't gotten that far yet. But I do emphasize yet, because it's coming. Eventually. Uh, what is all this? I wrote notes and I leave that shit everywhere. BEP says, why doesn't the DEI wagon try to do remakes of black IPs instead of trying to be recast? See, that's a good question. That's a really good question. And you could actually pair it with AJ3's question of why not do a female crow movie? There have been female crows, so yeah. I mean, I think the second crow was a female. Or was it the third one? It was one or the other. But there's been Native American crows. There have been Catholic crows. I'm not sure if there's been like an Arab crow or not. There have been children who have been the crow. So there's been all kinds of stuff in the comics. I specialize in the first one, but I used to have like a big omnibus of all of those. It was like an online omnibus, by the way. So it wasn't like I had anything physical. It was like an online omnibus I had of all the different crow books. And you would think these guys would use that opportunity to create whatever kind of crow they wanted to create and tell whatever kind of story they wanted to tell, but they wanted to do kind of like a remake. And it seems like Hollywood does not have any faith in creating new IP. So they just decide to run with the IP that's already been successful and trying to put a modern twist on it. But the modern twist never works. It only makes the property worse. And it makes people not want to watch it. Gozu94 says, I would love to see a Blood Syndicate movie. Oh, you mean like from Milestone? I'm not familiar with Blood Syndicate. I know there's maybe one day I'll go to my comic book shop in Roseville, and they used to have a bunch of dollar shit, before DC decided they was going to relaunch Milestone and put out these massive compendiums of the old stuff. You used to be able to go in there and buy a bunch of Milestone shit for $1, right? I went in there and bought like almost a whole run of Icon for $1 a piece. Was killing them before they decided to reprint all that shit. So I don't know if Blood Syndicate has been relaunched. I don't even know if the Milestone universe is still going for DC. I know they did Hardware. I know they did Icon. I know they did Static Shock. I don't know if they went beyond that. Now they've put out these compendiums. Maybe these things they're just reprinting the old ones. I don't know. So we'll see. But Blood Syndicate is one of those things I'm not really all that familiar with. BEP says it's time for The Last Dragon 2024. Make a crossover with Show Enough and NXT. I am very surprised they haven't tried to do that. Like they haven't tried to do like some kind of they did do the Black Karate Kid. They did do that. I'm surprised nobody ever looked at like something like The Last Dragon and decided to remake it. That's something that I would not hate if you tried to remake it. I wouldn't be angry about that. It's a classic movie. It's a classic, not great movie. Sometimes a movie doesn't have to be good to be a classic. And The Last Dragon is not great, but there's some great performances in it, and it's very funny. It's very entertaining, And Vanity was hot. She's not with us anymore, but she's extremely hot back in the day. Extremely. And sure enough, I think he just passed away a few years ago too. How would you want The Last Dragon to be a movie or a TV show? I would want it to be a movie. I think you can tell that story in 90 minutes. I don't think it needs to be, you know, 6 episodes of it. I think you can tell that story in 90 minutes. My problem with it is they would probably try to make it for quote unquote for modern audiences. So show enough would probably be like the local drug dealer who took taekwondo in his spare time or some shit. It'd be stupid. It'd be like, it just real big meat kind of shit, and then the oh god, I hate it. I would hate it, but it would be worth doing, I guess. But that's back when black people used to try to do stuff that was different. But it wasn't different because black people always liked kung fu movies. That's why we had Jim Kelly ended up with his non-acting ass. He he used to get movies because we liked watching homeboys do kung fu and beating people up. That's why Black Dynamite worked. You know, the black exploitation movies loved being based off of kung fu flicks. That's why Last Dragon was probably the last time you saw something like that. That's why it would probably work, but they don't want to. They don't want to do that. Gozu says the best part of Last Dragon is the hokiness. Right, like that's the part that everybody likes. When Sho'nuff is overreacting with the facial expressions and he's glowing and shit. That's the stuff that's fun about it. Don't turn it into Big Meech with Super Saiyan powers. I don't want to deal with that. That sucks. Is it or the black Republican capitalist selling out his neighborhood? You know what? You mentioned Robert Townsend. Why doesn't anybody try to remake Meteor Man? That's actually something that you can take and put a serious spin on it. Like Meteor Man was way too silly. Like they were doing dance moves and shit at the final battle. But Meteor Man had a very serious story to it. If you wanted to take that and say we're going to remake Meteor Man as a very serious superhero, that would work. You know, you really can do. Big Meech grabs a magic rock and it gives him superpowers. That would be fucking cool. You know, that could work. It doesn't work for the Last Dragon, but it works for that. I keep using Big Meech, but that's who everybody thinks they are now. So I'm just gonna keep using. I'm not gonna use like Rayful Edmond or anything like that. But like just imagine some local drug dealer ghost, and he grabs the magic rock, and all of a sudden he's got magic powers. That would be cool. Um, AJ3 says, "What is your favorite episode from Homeboys in Outer Space?" That show was so stupid, and I hate Flex. I hate Flex. Hate him. I did not watch one episode of that show. I probably would have if I'd have known there was never going to be anything else like it on TV. But I fucking hate that show. I hate Flex. He fucking sucks. He's the worst. Keep Kung Fu Master Larry a kid though. Yeah. There's so many other like stuff like Blank Man and Meteor Man. You could they remade Bel Air and put a serious spin on it. Nobody wants to see that shit. I don't want to see Carlton doing coke. I don't. No, I'm not doing. I don't. Not, I'm not with that. You could do that with Meteor Man though. Take Meteor Man and do some serious shit with it. Might be interesting. You know, they're not going to do that though. I don't know why. Robert Townsend is still alive. So last I checked, he didn't die, did he? He's still alive, right? Give him a call. Say, hey man, I want to remake Meteor Man in the same vein as Batman. Same story. Some kind of bookish dude has to protect his neighborhood from gangbangers who now have, the ability to use magic rocks to turn themselves into superheroes or whatever. And you can even, I can write that shit in my sleep. I got 10 ideas just talking about it right now, right on top of my fucking head. No problem. It would not be difficult to write that plot. It might be difficult 'cause I never wrote a screenplay before, but just coming up with that, easy. People steal ideas all day. I steal Robert Townsend's idea and then give him a shout out later. Like there's so much shit that they could have done that would be fun, funny, or cool that they haven't bothered to do. You know, that's like they haven't bothered to try to replace Pam Grier as kind of the badass, sexy, you know, super bitch. You know, like they didn't even try to create a new one after Pam Grier left the scene. There was not even an attempt. You know, now occasionally you see like Taraji P Henson or Queen Latifah doing an action movie or something like that. But Pam Grier already showed you the blueprint. They don't even try to do that. No attempts at all. You know, just we don't have any new Jim Kellys, no new Pam Griers, no new Jim Browns. Just a bunch of motherfuckers playing drug dealers on TV, and it's unfortunate, but that's just kind of how it is now. Robert Townsend is mostly a director. Well, yeah, he wrote and directed all that shit, a bunch of movies. But I don't know if he owns the IP to Meteor Man. I'm just saying it would be nice to run that by him to be able to get that done. You know, I settle for Shaq making his comeback over them releasing that Iron Hearts. You know, they're wasting a lot of money. But Disney is trying to get these characters over. They're wasting a lot of money. It's not my money though, so I don't care. I don't care. It's not my money. But I just don't watch the shit, you know? I don't get it. I don't get what the point of it is. She's not Iron Man. So and you're about to bring Iron Man back, aren't you? So why do we need this? It's weird. It's very awkward. But I'm probably gonna watch Deadpool and Wolverine tomorrow if I can find it. I am interested in that, but I haven't heard much about it. Some people liked it, some people don't. The only thing I know is that Gambit's in it. You know, so maybe I'll find that and watch it. Um, there's got to be some other movies that are worth watching. Other than that, I might just go watch some kung fu flicks because y'all talked to me about it. So now I want to see some. Did you ever get a chance to see Action Jackson with Carl Weathers and why it never succeeded? And do you think it needs to be remade or reboot? I just think that a lot of stuff that was kind of like Action Jackson came out at the same time. I watched it a couple of months ago. You know, it was kind of generic for its time. You know, where there was a lot of movies where good guy police officer is going to go off and do or law enforcement or whatever, and going to go out and take it to the terrorists or the drug dealers and all this kind of stuff. It just seemed like another 80s action movie. Just this time it featured a black man. You could probably remake it, you know. It probably wouldn't be a problem to remake it, but how are you going to make it interesting? There's not a lot of those movies nowadays, so maybe it'll be different just because of that. They're not action movies are falling off a fucking cliff, you know. Uh, try to find a good action movie that's not a superhero film. Good luck, right? Good luck with that. Like good old fashioned shootout movies or you know heist movies. Good luck. Kung Fu flicks, nope. Everything now is superhero or drama or fake anime. It's unfortunate. We're not taking chances anymore. And part of that is because the gatekeepers won't let anybody take a chance. You gotta Hollywood probably has to implode. You gotta wait for everything to crumble. Then they'll stop making bad Ghostbuster movies. They'll start making bad Indiana Jones flicks or whatever, and then we might be able to get some good shit. We might be able to get somebody to push the envelope and do something different. They haven't done anything like Terminator, Predator. They haven't done anything like, Indiana Jones in a long time. Something that you feel might be interesting in 10 to 15 years. They've done more running IP into the ground than they have creating anything new and destroying the IP that they even have that made money. Like they're about to shit all over the Lion King again. What did the Lion King ever do to you? That now you have to go in there and change the lore all over again. Weird. Just weird shit. Unnecessary, weird ass shit. That's what you got going on here. It's sad. It stinks. All right. It's 11 o'clock. I've been out here for 2 hours. I thank everybody for stopping by. I appreciate you. Um, so I'll see you guys on Monday and have a great weekend.